everyone? My name is Mark Stark here every single week at 1:30 Pacific Standard Time. And for my Facebook Live, and we have a very, I think, interesting and going to be passionate conversation today. And I have to preface what we're going to talk about today by this. I recently, really over the last 90 days or so, have been sent different videos just talking about the potential future challenges of the market. In fact, their word, and it was really frustrating because they came from a total confidence, like they know the future, that there was going to be a real estate crash in the future. So I thought it was important to look at all the facts around this concept. Now, I want to share right up front that I don't believe they're looking at all the facts. And I have to be also very direct. When I look at all the facts and all the information, I see completely the opposite. None of us have a crystal ball, but I always felt comfortable following facts. And today I have a very special guest, and that is Mr. John Ingram. And John, wave please.
Hello, everybody.
John is with our own Axia Home Loans, one of our largest affiliates with our organization. And he is a wealth of knowledge. And I have to tell you, yes, he really is. And you know what I love about John? John is the guy that when, just for example, Fannie, Freddie, FHA comes out with a new rule, he actually reads the entire aspect of the rule and can explain it. He knows his stuff because today we are going to put pressure on this concept of a crash or a myth of a crash.
Is there, should there, will there be a crash? That's the question.
That's exactly right. That's
Sure.
exactly right.
I think we can provide a lot of information. I'm certainly an analytical at heart, and so I've thought about this a lot and done a lot of reading, and so I'd be curious to kind of share this with everybody out there and kind of share opinions.
All right, so let's do this. I thought a good place for us to start, because everyone loves to compare the world to the past downturn that happened, call it 7, 8, 9, okay, sure, versus today.
Right.
So, John, why don't we start off with looking at some comparisons of the markets? And one of the places that I think would be a smart place to start is with supply. Can we talk a little bit about the supply of homes in the marketplace?
Economics 101, right? That's where we start. Supply, demand, that sort of thing. And so when we discuss supply, I think there's some really interesting numbers that we can look at to contrast the world that was 2005, 6, 7, and 8, and then the world post. So leading up to the Great Recession, as we call it, and the crash that happened, we were building nearly 2 million new homes every single year. This progressed from roughly 1.5 million in the 5 years preceding 2006. It had just ramped up every single year, building as many homes as we possibly could as fast as we could. That's a world of contrast compared to what we've been doing and seeing for the last 10 years. If you look at the last 10 years, we had a low point after the crash of building about 500,000 homes, and have very slowly ramped up our new construction to where in 2019 we built about 1.25 million homes total. This is really, really important insofar as it goes to the supply of homes. The United States, demographics-wise and just population size, grows every year. And we need to be building new homes for those people to stay in. And now we've gone from a situation, which was the world in 2008, where we had what ended up being an oversupply of homes, to now building far fewer and bringing in supply and demand back into balance, where we are still, even today, not building enough homes to cover the amount of the new demand that occurs each year. And that's a powerful, powerful force at work in our market.
Yes. And I have to tell you, when we think about supply, okay, of homes,
Yeah.
it leads me always, you hear supply and demand. All right.
Sure.
So let's look at clearly, all right, we are not building, and that's one of the challenges we're experiencing, certainly in the real estate business today, is we feel the lack of supply. I mean, new home builders are trying to build as fast as they can, but as you see, they're still running, what is that, about 35% under where we were, okay?
Yeah, compared to 1.25 million versus 2 million, that's 35% less homes being built. And I would just say, anecdotally, ask yourself the question: what does it take to get the builder to build homes? Are they building a lot of spec homes in your market? Is there a lot of standing inventory? Or are they waiting until they have a buyer in contract to break ground and really get those homes going? That's the reality of our world. I mean, just cutting through the numbers and just use the common sense filter of, are they oversupplying your market at this point?
All right, but let's stay on this concept of this comparison of what happened versus where we are today.
Okay.
So here's another aspect. Let's talk about owner occupied, okay, versus the investor.
Sure.
Because, see, I'm going to take you back. I remember in 04, 05, 06, the idea of the investor was mom and pop. You know, the guy next door owned 1, 2, 3, 4 homes. I mean, truthfully, I had people that I knew that owned 20 homes.
Well, I'd even change it to say, instead of maybe not mom and pop, but everybody could be an investor. You can be an investor tomorrow, right? It's the worst of the infomercial where, at that point, going back now pre-crash, 04, 5, 6, you had this progression of easier and easier access to money. And that led to everybody being able to be an investor in homes if they wanted to be.
Okay, now, but here's the kicker. When you go back to the heyday, this is not an exaggeration. There would be 300 people in line at a new home tract to buy a house. However, there was a handful of those people who were thinking of actually moving in to live in that property. Everyone else wanted to buy it. God, this is great. I'm going to buy it, hold it for a bit, okay, and flip it. Because, God, that's all you have to do and you make $100,000. That's the plan of attack.
I think it's certainly true if you go back in time in our markets in Phoenix and the Las Vegas area. Anybody and everybody in the world was a potential buyer in our marketplace. We had tons of people worldwide investing in our markets because why? Well, there was such high rate of appreciation and speculation that was going on. It was a slot machine that could be pulled and always get the win. There were some tough lessons that had to be learned out of that, but that was the reality. If you wanted to get a loan, there was a loan there for you, and it was buy a house, sell it 90 days later, and make a huge profit. That world created its own sort of cycle of progression that led us to a very
okay. So let's keep these differences organized. So first, supply, very different than it was in the call it the 08 downturn.
Very different.
Okay. 2, the purchaser mix, very different. Right now, our challenge is owner occupants. Your problem isn't that we have numerous people in line, okay, trying to invest to flip that house. The problem is finding a house from someone who's relocated, okay, who wants to move up, who is living in the marketplace or relocating the market and actually live in the home. That is a 30% difference. Okay, the investor pool at the time was a 30% difference, okay, than it is today. 30% of the market then was investors, which were mom and pop. And we're going to get into the financing aspect of that. Okay. I know when we talk about...
it's super relevant. I think we should.
Okay, so we're going to talk about that. But let's hold off on that. So right now, 2 things different. Supply, very different today, and the mix of the purchaser that caused a lot of the issues, okay, in the downturn.
I think it's common sense to basically say there is a difference in how we think of and treat real estate when it's a home that we're living in versus an investment that is trying to build wealth.
Correct. The other stipulation, the investor today And since the downturn, because truthfully, the downturn created an investor pool that never had existed before. In fact, it was so powerful, it got the interest of Wall Street.
Yeah.
And Wall Street jumped in with millions and millions of dollars, and they said, you know what? We're going to buy homes, okay, as an investment.
Yeah, it's like big billions of dollars. And a whole new industry was created. Maybe it's not really well known, but prior to roughly 2012, there was not a Wall Street investment that directly owned properties for rental purposes. That was something new that came out with the Blackstones of the world and various other REITs on Wall Street came in and said, hey, this is an opportunity for us to now buy individual homes as real estate on a scale large enough that we can make it an investable option for our clients. And so there was billions of dollars put into our national real estate markets that had never existed before and that owns real estate in a different way. I think that's an important thing, right? These investors are not there just looking to cash out on equity or to track the highs and the lows of the market. They're actually there for that reoccurring cash flow of rent-paying people. And so owning the real estate to get that cash is really a secondary thing. It's the cash flow itself that they're looking to invest in.
Okay, and how did that purchaser, okay, reduce the chance of a future crash? They're cash buyers.
Yeah.
See, the difference between the example I gave earlier regarding just mom and pop, they were leveraging everything.
Yeah.
You know, I know we're going to talk about loans coming up, but this is just such an opportune time.
Okay.
Just to touch a little bit on this, and then I will get back to demand because there's a couple of other aspects I want to talk about demand.
All right.
But you know, when you think of the loans that were available in 06, 07, 08, I mean, no income, no asset, no down payment. Yeah. You could buy property as long as you had good credit. Truthfully, as long as you had no credit, you could even do it. Acceptable credit. Yeah. You could sign your name and you got yourself a loan and you got yourself a house or houses.
Very, very low bar into home ownership. And I would say it's basically opposite today. The bar is to the point now, unfortunately, where there are good people that I think could make a house payment that I have to turn away. It's not the majority of the cases. The majority is certainly we can finance a normal, credible buyer, but the criteria is significantly different. Mark is exactly correct when he talks about the no income. You know, in my career, I've been doing this long enough to where I have given out loans to consumers where I did not prove how much money they made on a monthly basis or a yearly basis. I did not look at where the money was coming from to buy the house, so no assets. I didn't have to get into that. I didn't analyze their debt ratios to see can they afford all these monthly obligations. It was entirely different criteria. And then on top of that, you could do that with no down payment. So what was the risk analysis at that time? It was somewhat crazy. The product existed. Certainly Wall Street and Fannie Mae and the rule makers had decided that there is zero risk in real estate, and therefore we don't need the borrower to protect us. The real estate itself will protect us, and that's enough. If we just, the house will never go down in value. It has no risk, so we can always give these loans away. That dynamic does not exist today. You're in a world today where loans are in 99.9% of cases, we're required to verify your income, verify the money, where it's come from, look at your credit history, and you're required to put some down payment down.
Now, I got to push back on something, John.
Okay.
I hear today now. I knew about those loans then, okay. And you say, you know what? Well, they don't exist today, but I hear that they do. So I want to hear from you some of the differences because let me give you an example. Tell me what a cash flow loan is.
Okay, and I'll start out with this as far as I have heard this hyperbole, people being really excited, talking about, hey, those no document loans are back. I personally call BS on that, forgive my language, but the cash flow being an example of this product. So there is a investor product that allows you to purchase a property that doesn't look at your personal income or your personal debt load. It doesn't look at that. What it actually does instead is it looks at the projected rents or the actual rents on a property and tries to say, is that enough to cover this monthly house payment? If there's enough income there to support it, so basically it pays for itself or better, that loan exists. But here's the kicker. You're not getting those with 0 down or 5% down or 10% down or 20% down. Most of those loans are going to require upwards of 40% down payment to be able to make that math work. Now, I know as an investor, am I walking away from a 40% down payment? Am I doing that irresponsibly? Not very long, because you're going to go out, you're going to run out of money really, really quick. So those loans have other safety measures built into them that don't get talked about, but they're there.
Okay, so that is another huge difference, because if you compare to the purchasers at the time of the downturn, how many people did you talk to that said, well, I have a bunch of houses, I lose about $50 or $100 on each one. I have a couple that are really bad, it's about $500, but don't worry, my appreciation will take care of that, okay, because the house will go up in value. So not only did you have individuals that shouldn't own a house and should never have been able to purchase that home because they couldn't qualify, it was a negative cash flow that even on this type of loan would have never happened, and it had no down payment. And now today he's talking about 30-40% down.
Correct.
That's a huge, huge difference.
And you still have to prove that you have safety net money behind you. It can't be your last dollar that you're using as down payment. You have to have a significant amount of money left over, untouched, after buying the house. That is your safety net, should you have a vacancy for a month or 2 or 3. The reality is these loans now are structured to where the risk of the loan is being determined to be worthy of making the loan. It's not the real estate itself. None of these loans being given today want the real estate. They want you making the payment.
Sure. Okay, so going back to what we were talking about earlier, and that is about demand. Let's talk about the overall population growth. All right, so
sure.
I did a little bit of research, and in 2009, the U.S. had 308 million people in it. In 2019, 10 years later, we're at 328 million. Now, if we just do simple math, we've got 67% home ownership. That is 13 million plus additional homeowners in the marketplace that did not exist in 2009. Now, I know, because we were talking about this earlier, is you have been given some stats just on one segment of the market, and those stats had to do with new home buyers, for first-time home buyers. So there was a percentage of first-time home buyers coming into the market.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that.
And this, you can look up these individual numbers for your specific markets across the country, because the answer is different. But if we look at, say, Maricopa County, for instance, they're having household formation of about 560,000 new homes or new home formations through the years. What is projected?
No, 56,000.
56,000.
56,000. Yeah.
56,000 new household formations. Of that, if you work the numbers, about 33,000 of those will be home buyers during the year. But builders are only projected to build 26,000 new homes in that marketplace. So demand, 33,000, building 26,000. Round numbers here. You got the idea that even with the demand that's just being created this year in that market, we're not building enough homes.
Correct. And we're only talking about those stats, that we pulled had only to do with first-time home buyers. What about millennials? I'm just giving you an example. We already talked about overall population growth, which affects the overall U.S. But talk a little bit about
this is one of the most powerful hidden sort of factors that are going to be at work in our marketplace. This is not something that you're going to sort of hear about directly. You have to look a little deeper. But here's what you want to know. The largest single generation that we've ever seen is coming into home buyers now, millennial generation. They are reaching the age where it is typical for an American family or person to buy their home, buy their first home. We are at the beginning stage of that. And this wave is rising every year for the next 5 years, where we're going to have more and more buyers as a percentage that are of that generation coming into our marketplace. This is going to increase demand further than what we have even today. And it's going to continue to support the absorption of any real estate that we get. But it also, in my mind, it supports prices. This generation is not, in my opinion, going to be different than other generations. They're going to want to buy homes. Yes, if you go back 5 years ago, we were all wondering, are the millennials going to start buying? Are they just going to live with their parents forever? Well, I'll tell you now, the stats have begun to reveal themselves to say, yes, they in fact are buying homes. And that those buyers are going to become a larger and larger percentage as we go forward. They'll end up being the largest segment of all buyers in the marketplace right now. They're roughly 36% of all transactions are going to be bought by millennials this year. That's powerful. They are the largest single segment. More than what boomers buy, more than Gen X, Gen Y. Millennials are going to be the largest generation, and this is going to further support the demand for our real estate going forward.
And what we're trying to bring to light is, and this again goes back to the frustration I had watching these videos that take one segment. They look at appreciation.
Oh my God, appreciation's out of control. It's out of control. What's going to go on? We're going to crash.
Okay, and as you can see, when someone gets out of control, it's a problem.
It's unbelievable.
Okay,
but it is, all I hear about is how the appreciation is unsustainable.
Right, and they look at that one stat. And they bring up another stat that we're going to talk a little bit about. And well, let's bring this up now. Let's talk about delinquencies.
Oh, yeah.
So talk about, they talk about millions and millions of dollars of delinquencies. And of course, that was exacerbated by some of the rules due to COVID in the U.S. You were sharing some just overall stats that your company shared with you. Why don't you share?
Yeah, so if we talk about sort of the COVID experience specifically this year, we shut down the country in the middle of March, right? We went these lockdowns, that sort of thing. And many people were not able to work and were not earning money. And so they passed legislation that allowed us to deal with this and allowed borrowers to go into forbearance to stall or pause those loans. Well, it's interesting that since April, the number of mortgages in forbearance and asking for forbearance has declined month after month after month. It has gone down with fewer and fewer borrowers needing that forbearance help each month. I think this for me goes to this sort of whispered conversation of, wow, there's going to be a lot of distressed sales coming into the marketplace because, well, you have people who've lost their jobs or had disruptions to their income, of course, and they got into forbearance, and of course that's going to lead to a distressed sale. I don't see the connection, and for me it seems a little silly as you start to go through it logically. So in my mind, a couple of things. One, the stats on the borrowers who have done the right thing through their forbearance, communicated with their lender, and said, yes, I still need help, or I don't need help any longer, I'm ready to start paying my mortgage. That percentage of success in these forbearances is very high. We're only having a fairly minor percentage of people who are not telling us that they continue to need help and they don't make a payment, or who are not trying to work it out and deal with it properly. When we take that stuff forward, for me, you have to look at a filter of this. What causes a distressed sale? Well, a distressed sale is, I don't have any equity in the house. Well, good news here is this. In the forbearance programs, you got to skip your house payment with no additional interest being charged, with no late penalties being charged, no foreclosure filings, nothing to just eat up your equity in the property, in junk fees and the realities of those kind of things, no collection efforts. all of that stuff was put on hold. So you're in the same position today as you were, call it, in March. You owe the same amount of money. They didn't charge you extra interest, that sort of thing. So now you're going back, and if you're a consumer who's hopefully dealing with this stuff constructively, you will look at your situation and say, can I afford this home going forward? If I can't, am I a distress sale or a regular sale? Well, if I've owned this house more than 2 years, I should not be a distress sale. I should be able to get out of this house, and maybe I don't make money, or I don't make a lot of money, but I can sell it and right-size my finances.
Okay, now, I've got to make, because this is another key point that's so different. Okay, and let me just give you a stat of what happened to the Las Vegas market, because I remember it well. Okay, our average sales price went from $425 to $125 in a matter of months. Okay, so now in a situation where you have, okay, all these differences that we're showing here, is people weren't able to sell their property. It was a very different market. You had all those houses that I didn't own. I mean, I owned them, but I didn't live in them, and I just walked from them because most of them, or many of them, were negative cash flows. So I just left, and all those properties hit the market. We don't have that today for a lot of the reasons that we're talking about. The next thing, keep in mind, and this is sad but true, every healthy market has foreclosures.
Right? We should have some level of foreclosure.
Yeah, I mean, and listen, I think with COVID, it's certainly going to exacerbate that. You're going to have businesses that could not make it, okay, that, you know what, have no choice and have already either chose to lay off their people and or not hire them back, hiring a portion back and not all. And there's going to be people who relocate. And there's going to be, people looking for other jobs, whatever the case. We are going to have some of that foreclosure, but nothing shows me that we can't digest those properties. And yes, I'm most sensitive to California market, Arizona market, and the Nevada market. Absolutely. But I will tell you, those markets have gotten hit in different ways, okay, from the COVID crisis that we've been dealing with. So I am very comfortable in the markets that I operate in that, you know what, we will be able to digest, okay, any type of challenge from a standpoint of foreclosure or challenge with situation that inventory hits the market. In fact, we need so much inventory, it would be welcomed in many cases, not because of the challenges that someone's going through, but just because we are low on inventory overall in every market that we're operating in.
Can I share something with everybody out there? Because I think as realtors, and most of us listening are going to be realtors, one of the more powerful goods that I think you can offer people is to cause them to think and potentially make a decision about something. And what I'm really talking about here is, if we, once again, going back to the crash, I talked with many people through those years that ended up delaying making good decisions for themselves and really harmed themselves financially for a lot of years. And what specifically I think you guys can help with is this. If you have a person in your sphere that can no longer afford their home, the right answer is for them to make good decisions quickly to right-size that rather than drain their life savings holding on and waiting for a better day. The idea of using your life savings of retirement accounts or other savings to try to bridge the gap in a home that you can no longer afford is a terrible financial mistake. The sooner we get you out of that property and into one that matches your finances going forward, the better off you're going to be. And the more money we can leave you with in your savings to take care of yourself going forward is the better we can do for you and with you. Unfortunately, human beings out there will very often not address face these choices and these decisions until somebody talks to them about it. And so you guys bringing it up to your sphere and communicating that to your group of people that touch you in your lives and you touch in theirs, Just bringing up the idea that, hey, if you're under financial strain because of disruptions to your income, if you need to be looking at what's going on in your finances, make that decision to do that and right size it sooner rather than later.
That's a great segue for this next point. And that is what I think gets confused or maybe lumped in together is affordability of the home versus availability of loans. Mm-hmm. I want you to do, and I already know that, we talked a little bit about this. Let's use an example of a $300,000 house.
Right.
Okay, make it simple. $300,000 house. Now, let's be conservative and pick an interest rate that really was on the lower end. Call it 4%.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to go with 4%. Okay, versus today's rates. I'm a buyer. Tell me what my circumstances are, John, for if we could in a bizarro world, I'm buying the house at 4% and or at the same time, a friend of mine is buying the exact same house at today's rate, which is what?
You can get rates solidly in the twos. I mean, we have as low as 2.25% for certain programs and certain borrowers, to upper twos for others.
Why don't we just say 2.5%? Does that work?
Here's some numbers or some interesting things I'd give you. One is buying a $300,000 house at 4% has the same payment as buying a $370,000 house at 2.75.
Okay. 2.75. Okay, now, so that's even great. It's even higher on this side.
Yeah.
Okay, and we picked the low interest rate, so the spread can even be bigger.
Oh yeah, it could be larger.
Okay.
But you have the same house payment, 300 at 4%, 370 at 2.75.
Okay, but don't miss this because this is the part that gets missed. Yeah, you have the exact same payment. So someone at a 4% loan on a $300,000 house and 2.75 at 370 have the same payment. But John, the person at 2.75 dealing with the lower interest rates of what we have today, what is another huge benefit that they have that the person at 4 does not have?
Setting aside any concept of appreciation in the house and just looking at the principal that you're paying down, in 5 years, you'll pay down that house $6,000 more based upon the 2.75 versus the 4%.
Okay.
So you build $6,000 more of equity in just 5 years.
Okay. Do you see? You are building additional equity, okay, even though based on the appreciation, 370 versus 300, my payment is identical. That is a powerful stat that you need to understand in the marketplace, and it's why so many things are fueled from a standpoint of real estate if people are excited to buy, because it's an amazing opportunity. With the rates as low as they are now, you are building appreciation faster than you ever could in the past.
Yeah, it's actually one of the gimmicks that we didn't talk about as a contrast. The loans that the vast majority, and I'm talking 99.8% of loans being given, are principal and interest loans, where you are paying down your balance today. Back then, 2007, 2006, were interest only. They were ARM loans. There were all kinds of sort of gimmicks and that wedged the affordability for consumers to get into these homes. At this point, we use none of those metrics. You're required to qualify with principal and interest. You are proving that you can afford these homes, and you will have skin in the game in these properties. The dynamics are just completely opposite. And I guess in the big picture, when I look at it, the 2008 crash was really a unique event. I mean, it was similar to the Great Depression. It's not like we have those every 10 years or 20 years. If we go 50 years and see an event like that, that'd be it, basically. This, to equate everything back to this idea of we either have to be in boom times, making huge money, or in crash times, it's a false thought. It's a false belief. There is lots of gray area in between where it's possible in 3 years or 2 years or next year even, we could see home prices decline a little bit. A little bit. We're not going to decline 50%, in my opinion. Can't see the future. Mark doesn't have a crystal ball. I don't have a crystal ball. But having those fluctuations within a normal range are things that we're going to be dealing with forever. To equate everything back to the crash of 2007 is just, it's fear-mongering, and it's just extreme talk, in my opinion.
Well, you know, everything I'm reading, just on the overall economy, is positive. Okay, as much as this country has gone through, and I will say the world has gone through with COVID, it's amazing how positive the professionals have on the outlook of the overall economy.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, this is an important point, and I know you and I discussed it a little bit offline. The reaction to this crisis has been entirely different than what we did the last time. In 2007, when this stuff was going down, no one was there to help. The federal government did not react to what was going on and the needs of the crash that was happening and in process at that time. Lenders did not know how to deal with it. We weren't prepared for, millions of foreclosures or short sales, that sort of thing. Nobody was there on it. Now, we can compare that to today's. We were super quick in passing legislation. We allowed the forbearances without penalties to consumers. We gave them unemployment assistance. We've been really, really quick to stem the worst parts of this crisis. And now, at least in my mind, I can see the end of this, right? We've got the vaccines coming. We have a time where we can potentially start talking about normalcy, or the new normalcy, which is remote work and having the choice where we're not necessarily going to be restricted to living near where we choose to work. And those are things that we'll be adjusting with as we go forward. But let's not underestimate the benefits to how we reacted to this and the speed with which we reacted to this problem. We are really going to benefit from that. And as things just get better, it's going to be further sort of fuel or support for continuing good times ahead for real estate and for our national economy.
All right, so the moral of the story is, based on all these differences that we've talked about today, okay, that are very different than the 2004, 5, 6, 7, okay, crisis that ended up hitting in 08, 09 and forward, 7, 8, 9. Okay, because of these differences, when someone compares what we're dealing with today to what happened and picks out one or two, okay, talking points and does not look at the overall picture, it just doesn't hold water. So in my opinion, and John is correct, I do not have a crystal ball, but I do like facts. You know, what's the old saying? We're all entitled to our own opinion. We're not entitled to our own facts. And the facts are the metrics that created the downturn of 2008, okay, do not exist today in the same way. There are different aspects. And so I believe it's a bad comparison. And these videos that are going out, and like John just mentioned, fear-mongering or whatever, please be above that. It's not as easy to look at one stat and saying, aha, because of this one thing, I know what's going to happen, because they truly do not. With that said, I want to first thank John for his time today. I so appreciate it.
Thank you.
Of course, as always, if you like what we talked about today, like the information, share the information, and follow if you're not following already. I appreciate all of your time and support. Have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.